bring back Ebola to the United States. So if they go over there and do whatever they're doing for the American government, and they have employees who get sick and they bring the Ebola virus back, you and I would not be able to sue them for negligence, okay? If he believes that that's necessary, if he's going to sign an executive order to grant them amnesty or immunity, right? But we don't get immunity from the disease because of that. He's just giving them legal immunity, but he still sees that as something that's a danger, just like when he was at the CDC telling everybody there wasn't any chance that it was going to come to America, and that was the middle of September. We released, I think it was Paul that released the story about 160,000 hazmat suits.
250, yeah. There's multiple numbers.
Yeah, it was at that time, it was only 160. Now it's a tremendous number.
We're talking about liability. You're talking about liability. Who's to blame for the Ebola outbreak, right? This is one of the key big pieces in this story. Again, on InfoWars, called Doctors, Potential Ebola Cases Still Covered Up by CDC. CDC reportedly, quote-unquote, disappearing patients. And this is from doctors speaking to me, some public, some private. The biggest one privately told me, and this is the biggest piece right now, that the whole issue is when Ebola happens again and starts breaking out in cities, in major cities, as the most conservative scientists say it will, they're not going to blame the government themselves. They're not going to blame Africa. They're going to blame the independent hospitals and doctors responsible for it.
Yes.
They're going to blame the hospitals for them disappearing these quote-unquote malaria patients, which actually may be potential Ebola patients. The doctors that I spoke to, and again, it was me and you on air last month when I said the beginning of this, I only released some of it in an attempt to have people call in and see if they can confirm the story. I talked about doctors revealing to me in Dallas that there were cases that were being disappeared from the hospital records by the CDC. Dr. James Lorenzi, who is proud enough and brave enough and amazing enough to come and be public about it, revealed to us the same thing was happening up in Kansas City, potential Ebola patients being quote-unquote disappeared and their records being destroyed as John Doe. Now, beyond that, I'm releasing some further information. I'd like to hear some callers on it, see if they can confirm this. The doctors are freaking out. That's a quote. They're freaking out because they think that when further Ebola cases happen and when the families realize that these Ebola patients or potential Ebola patients, we should say that they kept asking me to say potential for liability reasons, that these potential Ebola patients being disappeared, the families, the citizens, the investigative journalists, the elements of the government that are good are going to want answers. And they're deathly afraid that they're going to come after them for it. They're going to come after these hospitals. And these are people that own hospitals and emergency care centers. These aren't just small-time people. They're afraid of what's going to happen in the aftermath. They're going to be blamed for the CDC coming in and disappearing the patients.
Well, you know, the doctor who called us and went on record, one of the things he was saying was that they didn't have adequate protective clothing to start with, but what they did have was being confiscated. And over this weekend, the Washington Post ran this article about this doctor who was brought back. I think he came back on Saturday. He was gravely ill. They tried to treat him with convalescent serum as well as with ZMapp, the genetically modified drug that they've created. None of that worked, and he died like the next day. And as I'm reading this story, there's an ad that pops up in the middle of it from a nursing association. And it's like two pictures that are alternating with each other. One of them says, this is what they give us to protect us from Ebola. And it's like a mask and a glove, okay? And it says, this is what we need. It shows a full personal protective suit, right? And they're asking people to help them to get this information out. But of course, the Washington Post is completely ignoring it. The only way they're going to get that information out in the mainstream press is to place an ad in an article about Ebola, because the Washington Post isn't going to talk about how they don't have adequate protection for the medical personnel, how they're being left out, hung out to dry, and then, of course, they're going to be the ones who are going to be blamed for it.
They're going to take the liability.
Exactly.
That's why they're freaking out, and they've been, but here's the thing. They're going around saying, hey, CDC, hey, government overall, we don't have the necessary equipment. We don't know what to do. And then the government says, you're fine, and then when the Ebola patient comes in, like the LA Times had an article where they interviewed the nurses, and the nurses said, yeah, Thomas Eric Duncan, I believe his name, he sat in the waiting room for like 2 hours spreading Ebola everywhere, and we didn't have the necessary equipment to even take him in, so we just took him in like normal. And he told us he was from Africa, you know, he had come from Africa, and we didn't know what to do. and then they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, hospital, you handled it incorrectly. You caused the spread, not us.
Exactly. That's where the liability comes in. We're talking to Anthony Gucciardi here in the studio. We've got Paul Joseph Watson, who's going to be joining us from the UK. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We're talking about Ebola cover-ups. Is it over? I don't think so. I wish it was, but it doesn't look like it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you have candida overgrowth, just taking antifungal agents or starving yourself of sweets does not address the cause. Candida overgrowth is the result of a toxic, damaged, acidic, low oxygen, and inflamed tissue environment. The goal should be to remove the toxins, heal damaged tissues, restore healthy pH, eliminate inflammation, and feed beneficial bacteria. Previous usage of antibiotics or steroids or exposure to mercury or other toxins can damage many cells in the GI tract and body that make you prone to candida overgrowth. Removing toxins and healing tissues should be the goal. One World Whey is a whey protein food that supports detoxification, repair of tissues, and elimination of inflammation, healthy pH, and growth of beneficial bacteria. One World Whey is duly reformulated to be higher in protein and lower in carbohydrate. We believe One World Whey is an excellent food to support your efforts to create a healthy internal body environment. Call 888-988-3325 or visit oneworldwhey.com. That's oneworld.com.
Do you have relatives and friends that are convinced there is no need ever to prepare for any kind of emergency? Are these also folks you buy Christmas presents for? At 30dayfoodsupply.com, we can solve both of these problems at the same time. Go to 30dayfoodsupply.com or call 541-229-0010. We can ship your Christmas presents directly to them. Choose from our original $99 30-day food supply, our long-term storage vegan burger mixes, and other oatmeal, soups, porridges, beans, and granolas for everyday use. All products are non-GMO, MSG-free, and vegetarian. Most are gluten, soy, and nut-free. Call 541-229-0010 today. Oregon Trail Foods and 30dayfoodsupply.com keep prices low, cutting out the middleman by buying directly from their producers in Oregon. Remember, only $10 ships your entire order to the lower 48. Visit the website 30dayfoodsupply.com. Call 541-229-0010. 30dayfoodsupply.com. 541-229-0010.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
Hi folks, Alex Jones here with some important information. I want to tell you about Matt Redhawk and his team of patriots over at My Patriot Supply. Several years ago, Matt was sitting in his 2-bedroom apartment, frustrated with the direction this country was headed and the charlatans willing to sell us out for a quick buck. Deciding to take action, a company run by patriots for patriots was born. My Patriot Supply has never taken a loan or accepted outside funding. They now operate 2 distribution facilities and employ over 50 hardworking American men and women. It is rare to find companies who practice what they preach. And that's why I stock my pantry with high-quality storable foods from My Patriot Supply. Go to mypatriotsupply.com/Alex today for special offers on emergency food storage, or call their preparedness specialist at 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927. Do business with someone who shares your values. mypatriotsupply.com/Alex.
There's a man going round taking names, and he decides who to free and who to blame. Everybody won't be treated all the same.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin with Anthony Gucciardi. We were just talking about his story that's just been picked up on the Drudge Report. Potential Ebola cases are still being covered up by the CDC, according to doctors that Anthony has talked to. We also have Paul Joseph Watson on the line in the UK. And Paul, of course, you covered this story about the lady who just died in New York a couple of days ago. They were watching her about Ebola. We had witnesses saying that she was bleeding profusely as she fell over dead, but then they came back later and said, no, there's no blood. And she didn't die of Ebola. She died of a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was a bizarre case. The eyewitnesses, this was a lady in a hair salon that just collapsed and died a couple of days ago. The eyewitnesses who spoke to the media said she was bleeding out of her nose and mouth. She had returned from Guinea around 18 days earlier. The hazmat crew turns up, says that it's a fever stroke travel illness that they were dealing with. And then within about an hour, they said, oh, no, it's just a heart attack. No problem. And then it completely disappeared. We know that the 9/11 dispatchers have been told not to even use the word Ebola in New York City.
Yeah.
The media's agreed not to report on potential Ebola cases. So it was a very bizarre incident. But this news story, which is out of Reuters, sounds like it's out of The Onion, but it's not. It's out of Reuters. Headline is U.S. to allow people from nations hit by Ebola to stay temporarily. Department of Homeland Security will grant temporary protected status to people from the 3 West African countries most affected by Ebola who are currently residing in the United States. They're going to give them amnesty for 18 months.
Wow.
If they've just come from Ebola-stricken countries. They can stay in the country for 18 months, and then that period will then potentially be extended after the 18 months. So we're not just talking about amnesty for illegal aliens. Now they're going to give potential Ebola victims amnesty in the United States. The DHS has just announced that today. Absolutely ludicrous. It sounds like it's out of the Onion, but it's Reuters that's reporting on that today.
And then they call us conspiracy theorists for saying that these top doctors that run hospitals, some have gone public, are saying that there are cases covered up by the CDC and they're disappearing them. Meanwhile, our government is willing to ship in Ebola patients and basically give them temporary citizenship to come over here for 18 months and potentially cause another outbreak. But then we're called conspiracy theorists for saying, hey, there are cases of Ebola. And also it's important to note, by the way, on that Forbes article where there was a professor, I think it was from Duke, he said in the article that we're so thankful to the Associated Press for not reporting on potential and suspected cases of Ebola unless they've been confirmed by the authorities. And the backlash was so much that he had to go and issue, it's actually just happened, he had to go in and say, that actually never happened. I was totally confused. That never happened. The AP never actually agreed to that. So you know, if you go to that article, he goes on and just says, that actually never happened. The conversation I said happened specifically down to the detail in the quote. That never happened.
On issue after issue after issue, whether it's the border, whether it's the climate change mandates that are coming along, whether it's this latest amazing order saying that they're going to allow people to have amnesty to come in if, you know, for 18 months if they're in an Ebola area. On every one of these issues and many more, you look at it and you say, what is Obama trying to do? Is he trying to deliberately destroy this country? And I think you have to say yes. He deliberately is trying to destroy this country in every way he can. Constitutionally, legally, economically, with health pandemics. When you look at the guys that are being sent to Ebola, the soldiers that are being sent over there, as we've talked to the fellow who wrote the treaties, I can't remember his name right now, I'm drawing a blank, but Francis Boyle, thank you. Francis Boyle, and he said, these are elite troops that are being sent over there, fighting troops. They're not being sent over as engineers or relief workers. And as they had the congressional hearings, they were saying, we're going to send them back after 10 days. And the congressmen were like, wait a minute. We've heard that 21 days is the magic day. And finally, he admitted, well, for all practical purposes, the entire country is an infectious zone. When they had said they weren't even going to give them protective equipment when they sent them over there. They're trying to bring it back. They're doing everything they can, sending soldiers there to bring them back, as well as bringing in, just opening the doors to anybody to immigrate from there.
You know, David and Paul, we're talking about a government that has injected since 1945 people that were perfectly healthy with radioactive isotopes, plutonium and uranium, This is admitted, just Google it, plutonium-uranium injections in 1945. We're talking about a government that forcibly sterilized people in the 20s, 70,000 plus people, 100,000 people overall. We're talking about a government that has done these things, tested babies with radioactive waste. We're talking about that kind of government. If we were talking about a good government, there'd be room for debate. But this government does not care about you getting Ebola. In fact, if it improves their agenda, they'll do it.
Absolutely. This is not something that's in the past. This is going on now. They continue these kind of experiments. First story I covered here was the same type of thing. We're going to be right back with Anthony Gucciardi and Paul Joseph Watson. Stay with us.
We're on the march.